Swiss Tower and another drizzly early morning as I get ready for my train ride to Mostar. So here I am in the modest but relatively modern designed railroad station. Ticket booth down there. Down there, a couple of blocks away, is my little hostel Mirun, which is the older brother's name. Mirem, with an M, is the younger brother's name. We're in Mostar, Bosnia Herzegovina, and since it's not raining at this moment, I thought I'd just take a little pan. This is a little square not too far away from the hostel, leading towards the center of the old part of town, including the famous bridge. What actually caused me to stop right now was this building, just because of its old-looking architecture and its bullet-ridden facade. We're looking down at the Mostar River, which I think is the river we followed all the way from the top of the mountains from Sarajevo down to here. But it's interesting counterpoint, this old building and that modern new building. But it looks as though this old building may be restored, and this front portion will be the basis of a bigger enterprise. Now the left bank, which is to the left, is the main part of Mostar, where all the main tourist attractions are, although there are certainly something over on the right. Notice that tower, which tends to be that kind of a design, tends to be a Muslim tower, and yet it's got a cross on top, so maybe it's one of those that was taken over time. Notice what a rugged river line this river makes through this kind of rock. And here we're looking back at the far end of that square that we were looking at, and to the right I think is the old town. I'll just explore it now. Well, I decided to take a little walk but my sciatic is killing me, so I got down to the tourist section looking for a place where I could have a bite to eat, and basically some begova chorba, which is that thick chicken soup. And I stopped at this place, and the man insisted that I come down and take a seat on the terrace, and I can see exactly why he insisted. This is the famous bridge. I believe that the Serbs, in their evil, purposely destroyed, even though it's of national heritage, international heritage value. Countries that do like that should have the international community force them to pay all costs for the repair and reconstruction, plus some kind of a bounty, punitive, for their malicious destruction. And presumably somewhere there are some steps that take us down. Now it's possible that this could be the second of the two circular arched bridges. I don't know for sure yet. Could check the map, I suppose. Even though this map is upside down, it's the correct orientation for me. On the left-hand side where you see the H, follow the little arrow backwards to that dot, and that's where my hostel is. So I walk down towards the river and along that street, which gives no view of the river because it's all developed, to the square, which is this area where the white circle is, where it's circled, and that's white. And then I walk down the street that's indicated, and I've ended up right across, probably about somewhere where that X is, or what looks like an X on the camera above the river, and there is where the bridge is. So I'm pretty sure I'm here because there, as you can see, is other tributary coming into that river, and as we look up you can see on the far right side underneath the arch is a river coming in, a small one. I'm telephotoing so I can see if those are in fact bullet holes. It's a wonder no one's built anything down on that platform. I wonder why not. And just some more obligatory scenes. Here's an example of turning shell casings into art. Also houses the museum of the bridge. So this is the entrance from the east side to the bridge. Whether this was the original design or not, I don't know. It might have been, given that the trade was done normally with animals, and this would give them purchase on the bridge. Here we are on the pinnacle of the bridge. I'll just pan about. That's the west side. It was over on that side that there was a line dividing the Croats and the Serbs, apparently. How it divided them, I don't know, since they shelled each other almost constantly, and they both did cultural destruction intentionally without military purpose. On the other side, it's interesting to see this little falls coming out and the ledge that those people are on. There are some places in the world that just seem to be ideal homes to own for their cultural interest, I guess you'd say. And this homes up here would be one. Imagine the view from this particular room. An interesting pan shot down through these reconstructed buildings. And this arch here. Notice the weathering in the rocks here. Perhaps not only from water, but also from, of course, usage by animals and man. And now we're looking down a west side tourist slot. One can hope that these low-slung buildings here, and this several stories, 3-story buildings, are in fact somewhat authentic, as well as these older trade buildings here. Probably reconstructions, of course, but when the reconstruction of the bridge was planned, it was also anticipated and planned for and financed that the surrounding area would be culturally restored in order to give the bridge its historical context. It's interesting how strong those iron window shutters look. One wonders where this water comes from, but it may be what contributes to that outflow that we saw from the bridge down below. This is the backside of that tall tower on the side of the bridge. What I look for when I'm roaming around are examples of what may be authentic history, like this little building here. Don't know if it is, just hope it is, including the later buildings next to it. And here are a couple more stone buildings that look like they might be authentic. Who knows, but hopefully the design is. There's probably a greater source of that water that we saw. You know, when tourism becomes overrun at a place by many things, but one is allowing trash to accumulate. And here on the west side, on that tributary that flows in beneath the old bridge, is still another similar but smaller bridge. Notice this building generously pocked with bullet holes. And notice here this heavy slate but well organized roof. And it's not alone. Where I had lunch is right there, dead center. That table just to the left of the door. This is a new street surface going in part of the old town. Hopefully get rid of those pebbly rocks that someone thought were clever. They're just a bitch to walk on most of the time. This is a good example of why elevations of streets are much higher than the ground floor of a few centuries before, because they keep elevating them. I don't know what this building is, but you can see a little bit of an example of the damage that these people were trying to impose on each other. A good illustration of an abandoned old building. The insides are filled with trees. It's interesting to look at these panels of this damaged building. Here, this panel right in front of us, slightly to the right, looks like hunting scenes from ancient times. This may be even battle scenes, but certainly a common motif of the people holding hands at the base, which is an irony. Notice the Muslim crescent in there. Here, a tree that may symbolize the tree of life or something of that nature. The spiral here, and a spiral that is a dual spiral, something you see on pictograph sites oftentimes throughout the world. In this middle panel down at the bottom there, looks like swords, but yet animals that might be hunted. But the three people are passing between them, whether it's flowers or something else, I don't know. But notice it says 3 times 3, so that has some significance. My guess is that all of these, the symbology probably suggests this was a museum, but I don't know yet. In the center of this motif, in the center of the screen, appears to be 2 men jousting. This is interesting. In the bottom panel, it looks like 2 birds on top of a ungulate that seems overwhelmed by that, although the 2 to the side don't. Not untypical that birds can attack animals of that size, like the golden eagle of Africa. Notice here again 2 men on horseback with swords at a tree. What does the tree symbolize? You see that more than once in through here. Man with a sword. That looks like a man with his shield. Another sword to its left. So a lot of violence implied in these panels. Perhaps a dead man. That intersection up there is where the new pavement starts to the left, where my house still is, and to the right is the older pavement, which ultimately is pebble. I've come down here just because I was intrigued to see how close I could get to the river, and I'm finding this area here, so I'll follow it if I can just to see where it goes. Needless to say, I'm in a non-tourist area. There are people down along the river. It's a rugged river. It's a good kayaking river because it doesn't look particularly dangerous in the way of rapids, and yet spectacular surroundings. Might be a tad difficult to pull out and get up above for some reason, but there are steps occasionally. Homes here with delicious views. Of course, the countryside around here is spectacular too. An interesting old building, only because it is old. In many parts of the world is the contrast between new buildings and old buildings, but not all that often the contrast between new buildings and war-damaged old buildings. One solution for my very painful, seriously painful sciatic back right now, which seems to be affecting me right in the area also where I had my inguinal hernia. I think I'll just hit bar after bar and getting my soda water and I can relax it. I always do a little focus on dogs when I'm traveling in the countries. And here there's an interesting dynamic. Not only are the dogs very benign and very friendly, almost overly deferential, but a young girl went skating by and passed that dog slowly and stopped to reach down and pet him. He has an ear tag too. Most of those rugged, spectacular mountain faces that I saw coming in here were a metamorphosized slate, like we're seeing on top of this building, I believe. Metamorphosized in the sense that you could see that huge areas of it had been twisted and churned by the forces. Look at the minimalist approach to decorations of the mosques. I see why other people were walking down here. This gives you access to this pedestrian bridge. I'm really intrigued by what a magnificent river this is from the viewpoint of the rocks that it goes through and the carvings that it's made of, except where they've crafted it up by putting slabs of cement down there. But what an incredible backdrop. This entryway has a pleasant symmetry and simplicity to it. The most extravagant decoration is in those window panels. Please. Of course, you can't overlook the detail in this classic in the Muslim world. Here what looks like the remains of a gravestone and an ablution fountain. Here's a simple large mosque with what looks like painted, slightly white painted, leaded rooftops. This little brick monument, very pretty considering it's a brick, apparently houses a memorial or a grave of an important person beneath it. Of course, that is a cemetery. But notice behind what looks like, again to me, a hammam with those chimneys. Take a closer look at this. Notice some of the design elements. Beautiful dome, of course, made out of brick. A little bit of embellishment there. Don't know what that waving line is. It may be nothing other than the juxtaposition of the tiles that are used to make it. Notice the different color of the faces of the brick here, and different layers, and that typically pointed arch, if you will. And the little hint of blue there. At one time this may have had some lovely painting inside. A little bit closer look at these chimneys and the domes above them. The domes seem to be almost rectangular, if not square. Minarets are so light and beautiful for that reason alone. Notice the embellishment is so delicate that it's difficult to see it. The columns contain embellishment. I wonder if that is green paint or brass or bronze oxidizing. Same at the base here. This covered area that we're looking at is probably added. Looking up at this one dome, we can see that at one time it was probably well painted, as were the others. Again, here if we look, and I'll try and get in closer, we'll see a section how delicate the artwork is. And I wonder what this thin tree is a symbol of. This is probably the ablution fountain structure. Quite elaborate, really. And probably still in use. Notice the girl work to keep the birds away. Look at the pretty stonework. And here carried on throughout the rest of this patio in the back. Notice these windows of stars, six-sided stars, and hexagon, it looks like, or sexagons. What a quiet place. This quiet cemetery, certainly much older than the one we saw moments ago. Although there are at least two relatively new monuments here. Always I have to remark on the graves of those who were presumably important, if not in society in their own minds, who went to more elaborate detail to immortalize their remains. But now that immortalization itself is beginning to crumble. And in this cemetery, that's the most elaborate one, destined to last perhaps longer than the other two. These folks advised me this was a medresa. Again, a major shift in my thinking that all chimneys and little domes that look the same arrayed together or not necessarily hammam. Just for the fun of it, a closer look at the detail of some of these gravestones. This on top looks like the hat that some wear. I think officers of the church wear that little conical, quasi-conical hat, truncated conical hat. But this also looks like a turban, and its upper portion suggests a vessel, but it may or may not be. This one I find interesting. It almost looks like a portrayal of one of those cheap plaster of Paris Indian headdress things that kids buy at summer camp and then paint, take home as a masterpiece. Here, a simple version of what we looked at, and there, maybe the most pure version of at least the upper part. I think this sign in this little park says, "I love Mostar." And it's a pretty little park with a lovely tree in the center. And a few memorials, if in fact they're not gravestones. And a pretty badly damaged building. Looks like it's trying to be restored. Maybe it had some very political significance. And one block up from the main drag to look at this pretty building. There's the roller skating girl that earlier showed the affection for that old dog. I wonder how much of the damage to this building was simply war-inflicted damage. It looks like they're trying to do something with it, or were trying. Maybe they're just bolstering it so it doesn't fall down until they can fix it. But look at some of this embellishment a little bit more closely. The colors here, it looks like this might have been a rich-looking old building. This would have been the entrance, and we can still look at some of the detail. So let's try, just for fun. Some statement or name above that door. And above this you can actually see a piece of metal sticking out. See it in a little bit to the right of center? It would have been a post for something else that was appliqued on. And that idea is enhanced even further by this large mosque that we're approaching. And of course to my left is a cemetery, relatively new now, but these massive iron door shutters and window shutters are interesting. And look at the locking mechanism, long grown, rusted. Pretty old door. You can see if I proceed down here further, I'll encounter the tourist section. So I'm going to back off of that now. Pretty little structure. It's lost its roof now. What it was, I don't know. Again, this wooden porch, probably added. And these domes and walls were probably covered with a plaster, and then with some kind of simple but elegant art. Ironically, here is a little piece of self-styled lapidarium with some coloration still on it. Maybe this gives us a hint as to what might have been the colors on this mosque. We can see inside a little bit. This is a raised level. I'm not quite sure what it was for. Either spectators or for women, or maybe where a man stood to give lessons. And here a pretty little ablution fountain, although a new one. Interesting, this crypt, old, protected, damaged, surrounded by all of these new ones, including young people. This man who only lived 2 years or 22 years, but notice he died right after, if in fact it was after, this Bosnian conflict. And I don't know the significance of this now new current design of gravestone. Notice she died 94. All of these seem to give a date of 94. Perhaps it's a special and specific design honoring those who died as a direct result of the conflict. This is a nice broad stairway leading up probably to a residential area with some kind of what looks like a church tower. And a clock tower to boot. Seems to be still used. There are flowers up above and lightning rod and a pretty entrance. There's a sign there, so I'll find out what it is. But notice this pretty home with a patio right next to it. A large number of gravestones, particularly down there at the front, with that design to it. My guess is that this was an old original cemetery that was restored for the 94 war deaths. They're a narrow building, looks to be quite old, with very large and dramatic window and window shutters. A little bit of detail the bullets could not erase, and they're on this side of the building because behind me and on the other side of the river was the enemy. They're this people's enemy. Again, you can see just hints of allusion to a better past looking back down the road. Pretty little oasis, whatever it is, I'm not sure here. But dramatic views overlooking the river, and I think I do know. I think I am almost directly above the river. So looking back down the tourist road, panning across the river, where I am is above the bridge now. Art studio stuck into that atmospheric entry. Earlier in the day I was behind that large tower building across the river from us, a bit obstructed by the corner of this building right here. So here we're on the opposite side of the river and on the back of this tower. And again, a large administrative building which did add luster and importance to this area and this particular street. Pretty little building, probably related, of course, to this mosque. With its modest minaret, and its role was that of a medresa. Notice this wall of some other earlier structure. The bridge will be right to our immediate right in line with that tower, I'm sure. Notice that while small as a mosque, it still has these typical Islamic window features and the two, let's call them prayer platforms to the side of the main entry. Here I can see inside. I forget what that niche there in the center with the blue is, but it is the direction looking through that to Mecca. And this little pulpit is one of the few things inside a mosque that is oftentimes very elegantly produced out of stone or wood. That is where the imam, I think it's called, would preach or give lessons or whatever. And here a hint of the past, a little balcony over covering probably the entranceway. I'm guessing that all of these windows had pediments like that one, triangular one. I think that's what it's called. It does illustrate the transience and the superficial nature of much of the grandeur of government, easily displaced with a few bullets, rockets, or just plain weather and time. Here a pretty little park beyond the wall for residential use, but not really intended for much use because there are very few places to sit and relax, like that one spot there, or the wall. And yet considerable time went into the placement of these designs by little stones. A monument to someone of importance. Sometimes as I walk around, like in this last block, I would swear that my nostrils are picking up this acrid smell of burnt gunpowder. Now look down there, it looks like there are buildings that have been on the face restored a bit. Maybe this is what one hopes to see happen to the street behind me if we've just traversed. Here a very dramatic and pretty scene of these buildings under this large mountain with a spectacular river. And this is the area, not where tourists are, but beyond the bridge, further to. Imagine living in these riverside homes. You'd think that they would all have nicely done balconies and that they would sit out here and enjoy the view, but apparently not. Now a pan down to the bridge. Notice the mosques. We can see minarets in this one scene alone. Looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6, 7. And if I pan around a little farther, 8 and 9. Well, at least there's a clock tower. I stopped in and bought some chocolate, little cookie type things. There were 3 kinds. This is the first one I've tried. And there's some kind of, I can't recall exactly what this taste is inside here. It's not one that we in the States use frequently, although I've tasted it before. But I understood that chocolate was good for my pain. I read that somewhere. This was the second of what I purchased. And it also has a taste that's somewhat familiar, but I can't remember where. Not native to our culture, although it's probably used there. Here's another view, and I'm guessing I can get down to the water's edge. Might as well go. Here's the man we saw fishing earlier, from up on the bridge to the right. Not so dramatic a pose now. And there the medresa that we visited. And the tower. And the bridge. And this one that would look like a banana had I not eaten off the left side is what it appears to be. It tastes like banana. Not quite as good a view as the man beside me, who's a little bit more to the right and picks up that mosque more clearly. Still on the west side, and I think that may be the clock tower that I looked at the top of the steps. It had the pretty little house beside it. And again with the parade of mosque, again with the parade of mosque minarets. I'm standing above that little bridge I saw when I was over across the river where that couple is, man with the red shirt. This little arched bridge. So I'll go down there and pursue that area a bit. Pretty locations. Imagine living right where you could hear that falls all the time. It was good that this whole area was redeveloped, or restored I should say. It does give it context. Makes you feel like you're part of some whole. Imagine this picturesque scene, if in fact it might have been, as it is now, but authentic in its time. This little building, right in the heart of the West Side tourist section, is apparently a center for children and young people who have special needs. Beautiful way the sides have been terraformed, if you will, particularly to accommodate that tree and the restaurant. Makes for a very pretty setting. This is called the Crooked Bridge, simulating, of course, the same design as the old bridge. I wonder if this was an original kind of building. In other words, just the same style. It's obviously had been reconstructed, but whether it was designed as some kind of a pertinent defensive structure for the bridge. Exactly why it's called crooked, I don't know, since it seems to be perfect. But isn't this a quaint, romantic little spot? Here the restaurant prices are in euros. This looks like a clockless clock tower. Why, I don't know. But we can see from here that it has a Christian cross on top. I just found the battle damage, the bullet holes to these steel doors to be interesting. What here could have precipitated this intense attack, or was it a mortar shell? Those rips and tears rather than discrete bullet holes. Here's a modern house of unique design. What, if any, motif it has, I don't know, or style rather. A tribute apparently to one fallen on this side of the river. And here I'm walking down what appears to be the main, at least walkway drag. This building, probably restored since it's too good a target for the other side of the river, probably reflects what those other buildings would have looked like, and may someday again.